Can you imagine being slapped with a 1.8 billion euros fine? Well, Apple doesn't have to imagine. It's their reality. Just picture it, a fine that hefty, all because of allegations of anti-competitive practices. It's no small change, is it? The European Union took a stand, pointing a stern finger at this tech giant's conduct in the market for music streaming apps. Stay tuned as we unravel the events leading up to this monumental fine. Apple, the tech giant we all know and love, found itself in hot water following a 5-year investigation. It all began when Spotify, another major player in the digital world, raised a flag. The music streaming service felt stifled under the weight of Apple's mighty App Store. And so, they called for a thorough examination of Apple's practices. This was no ordinary investigation. It was an exhaustive 5-year probe into Apple's dominant position in the music streaming market. The focus was on how Apple's practices might be stifling competition, a serious concern in our increasingly digital age. The European Union took the helm, unafraid to challenge one of the world's biggest tech conglomerates. The crux of the investigation was Apple's App Store, a platform with millions of apps at its disposal. It's where we go to download our favorite games, productivity tools, and of course music streaming apps. But Spotify argued that Apple was playing favorites, giving its own music streaming service an unfair advantage. And it wasn't just about favoritism. The investigation also delved into the issue of communication. Could developers of music streaming apps freely communicate with their users? Or was Apple, in its dominant position, stifling this essential dialogue? This investigation wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a series of regulatory actions against Apple, particularly concerning its in-app payment service and commission fees. Apple's practices have been challenged in other regions too, like the Netherlands and South Korea. In these countries, regulators are questioning Apple's solutions to allow alternative payment services while still charging a commission. But what exactly did Apple do to provoke this investigation? Let's dive deeper. The European Union's bone of contention with Apple hinged on the company's alleged abuse of power. This power struggle centered around 2 critical accusations. The first allegation was about Apple's control over communication between music streaming developers and users. The second focused on Apple's in-app payment service and commission fees. Let's delve a little deeper into the first allegation. The EU claimed that Apple was using its dominant position in the market to restrict communication between music streaming developers and users. Essentially, the regulators argued that Apple was acting as a gatekeeper, controlling the flow of information and interactions within its App Store ecosystem. This was seen as an anti-competitive practice, stifling innovation and limiting consumer choice. Now, on to the second allegation. This one was about Apple's in-app payment service and the commission fees. Here, Apple was accused of enforcing a system where all in-app purchases had to go through their proprietary payment system. This meant that Apple was taking a cut from every transaction, a practice that was seen as exploitative by the regulators. Furthermore, even when Apple allowed alternative payment methods in response to regulatory pressures, they were still charging a commission. This was viewed as Apple maintaining a stranglehold on the market, squeezing developers and users alike. The European Union wasn't alone in their concerns. Apple faced parallel challenges in the Netherlands and South Korea, where regulators echoed similar grievances about the company's practices. No matter where you looked, it seemed Apple's approach to managing its App Store was under scrutiny. With these allegations, Apple's practices were put under a microscope. The tech giant, known for its sleek devices and innovative software, was now being questioned for its business practices. This marked a significant shift in how Apple was perceived, not just by regulators, but by developers and consumers around the globe. After years of scrutiny, the hammer finally fell on Apple. The conclusion of a painstaking 5-year investigation by the European Union regulators culminated in a staggering fine of 1.8 billion euros, a verdict that sent shockwaves through the tech industry. This was no ordinary penalty. It was the climax of a saga that began with a complaint by Spotify, which led to uncovering Apple's anti-competitive practices in the App Store. The regulators had spoken, and their verdict was clear. Apple had abused its dominant position in the market for music streaming apps. The magnitude of the fine is a testament to the severity of the violations. The European Union, known for its stringent regulations and commitment to fair competition, deemed this penalty necessary to ensure a level playing field in the digital market. The fine was not just a slap on the wrist for Apple, but a clear message to all tech giants. Anti-competitive behavior will not be tolerated. The regulators didn't stop at the fine. They also mandated that Apple allow music streaming developers to communicate freely with users. This move is expected to give consumers more choice and control, shaking up the dynamics of the app market. But Apple's regulatory woes don't end in Europe. The company has also faced similar challenges in the Netherlands and South Korea, where regulators are contesting Apple's solutions to allow alternative payment services while still charging a commission. It seems the tech giant's business practices are under the microscope globally. This verdict is a landmark moment in the tech industry. It's a wake-up call that signals a shift in the landscape. The regulatory bodies are watching, and they're not afraid to take on the big players. A 1.8 billion euros fine is no small change, even for a company like Apple. This verdict is more than a financial penalty. It's a call for change, a demand for fair play, and a testament to the power of regulatory bodies in shaping the future of technology. This fine is not an isolated incident. Apple has faced similar challenges in other parts of the world. Indeed, the ripples of these regulatory actions have been felt beyond the borders of the European Union. Let's take a trip to the Netherlands and South Korea, two nations where Apple has also found itself in hot water. In the Netherlands, the tech giant has been under scrutiny for its App Store policies. Regulators took issue with the fact that Apple was allowing developers to use alternative payment services, but was still charging them a commission. This was seen as a violation of fair trade practices, leading to a heated legal battle. The outcome? A hefty fine and a mandate for Apple to change its approach. Meanwhile, South Korea has been making its own waves in the tech world. The country has introduced legislation that fundamentally challenges the way Apple and other tech giants operate their app stores. The law, known colloquially as the anti-Google law, requires Apple to allow developers to use their own payment systems, bypassing the commission that Apple usually takes on in-app purchases. The implications of these events are significant, not just for Apple, but for the entire tech industry. The control that giants like Apple have traditionally held over their platforms is being challenged. The outcome of these challenges could redefine the relationship between platform owners, developers, and consumers. These incidents highlight a growing trend. Regulators worldwide are taking a more proactive stance in their oversight of big tech. They are pushing for more competition, transparency, and consumer choice. This is a clear sign that the landscape for Apple and other tech giants is changing rapidly, with regulators worldwide taking a keen interest in their practices. This is more than just a story about a fine. It's a story about market dominance, consumer rights, and the power of regulation. It's about understanding the tech world's dynamics, the balance between innovation and monopoly, between consumer convenience and freedom of choice. This episode offers a window into the intricacies of the tech industry and provokes thoughts on how we, as consumers, navigate this ever-evolving landscape. If you found this video informative and interesting, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. We appreciate your support.